Okay. First of all, I just want to say thank you, God. And for me, it's been hard to obviously to deal with what's happening to me, but I have to be thankful to God that while this is happening to me, you know, I was able to stay in the realm of reality. I say these things because I know that every day I'm being broken down psychologically and obviously physically. My organs are being destroyed, and my sanity is being taken away. But I got the chance to say what I need to be said, what needed to be said, and especially when this, as a target individual, what you find out is there's a lot of people around you, civilians, really nobody's, right? Those are not important people in the sense that in regard of what's happening to you, they just taking action in regard of like just doing their task. They're nobodies, right? In regard of what's happening to you, maybe they could, some of them could be somebody's in regard of like maybe they're executive and this and that, but these people are nothings. For me, I've accepted the reality. I cannot even truly hate them for what they doing to me, but I just hate them for what they try to stop in regard of like reality, counter, and the way they try to portray themselves as to make you as a target individual think that this is anything but what it is. And on top of that, the reality that these people deserve death and more for what they're part of and what that means to be part of what they're part of. And the facilitated evil that they partake in is so facilitated that they almost like don't even put it in the perspective of how fucking disturbing it is because it's so facilitated. And please understand, I know that it's facilitated because they are working for this program. And the way they try to find a way to escape the reality is like children that just come up with a, an alternate reality to deal with reality. But the thing is, they enjoy what they're part of. Nobody's forcing them to partake in this. They choose to be involved in this because they enjoy what they get out of this, the incentives, the financial, or whatever the incentive, which means the ability to control a human being and control reality in the in the sense of how a person can experience reality. In my brain right now, they're making me have these imaginative thoughts to counter what I'm saying. That's what they love. This it's like reality can be reconstructed. Basically, they are involved in a program that can control human beings. Now, understand that alone can be an intoxicating feeling. What I am and what you see there is that woman all the way there. It's a targeted individual. Targeted individual is what we've been calling ourselves, and that means that you become a test subject, and governmental entities are utilizing you as a guinea pig. You deal with some surreal weapon systems that can attack your mind and your body in so many ways. Using these energy weapons, they are destroying my organs. They're destroying my health. They're destroying my bones. And they're just in their pajamas doing that to me. Because this weapon system can do that. And who is they? It's obviously Department of Defense related entities. It's obviously Department of Defense resources being applied onto us. This is defense weapon. Using us to develop this weapon system. That's the reality. And they contract these retards of human beings. That's why I call them. Excuse my language. Excuse me for using these harsh words. And I know this mental handicap, but I call them that because they're not mentally handicapped. But for the convenience of doing what they do and participate in what they do, they become that. And on top of that, they do that just to break you down, to gaslight you. So I've been around all kind of
what we call perps. Perps are the civilians contracted by these governmental entities to partake. So what's happening is they put you in a control environment where people from your coworkers, neighbors, all of these people around you participate in gaslighting you into breaking you down and to psychologically just destroy you, depattern you, and repowering you in this fashion. And they participate in try to convince you that no, you're this, you're that, and that. And on top of that, with target video, like I said, I deal with the V2K, voice to skull. When we deal with voice to skull, it becomes another level of surrealness in the sense that you are now mentally being altered. As in, you are no longer yourself in the sense of you don't think the same way, you don't react the same way, your memories are falsified, your reactions are falsified, you are being just controlled completely. And the control are the most degrading. And they do everything possible to break you down into accepting, oh, this is you. For me, it's been disgusting things. They've been forcing me to have this nasty reaction every time I see these children, little girls especially. And every time it happens to me where they force me to have this reaction when I see a little girl, and sometimes they purposely, like yesterday I was, for example, in a meeting with at work, and they're not really co-workers, they're more like perps who employed me to break me down. And so this co-worker just showed like a picture of a mother holding a baby, and she pretended, and she was sharing her screen. Obviously, she was trying to force me to see a picture of a child so they can manipulate my brain to have this nasty reaction. Now, I made a lot of video about that. This is a lot of that's the part of the degrading tactics of as a target individual. This is commonly utilized to break us down. Then this purpose is supposed to make me think, now what we're doing, we're just mapping your brain, we're doing this, we're just pairing your this reaction, we're mimicking a reaction that you felt when you were this age or this. It's just nonsensicalness. Like you like even when they try to be rational, it's like, first of all, they talk about mimicking, pairing the brain to you when you were a child, as young as this child that you see there. Now, the reason why I have this picture, and then this is a video that you've seen many times, but I just want to put the contrast of reality. When I was this kid's age, I did this inappropriate act where, as a 8th grader, 13, 14, just maybe turned 14 years old, I did this damn thing to myself. It's inappropriate, of course, but it's something that they want to exaggerate. I did not molest a child. I did not do something to a child. But me as a child did something to me, to myself. I don't need to go into the details. That it was still inappropriate, and it's something that, looking back, I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? But I recognize that as an act of a child and not the exaggerated version that they wish it was. Because what they wish I did is like I did something to the child, who did not none of that happened. But I did something to myself that should have been happening to myself. But as a kid, what a child is capable of doing. You see that. You see as obviously a child. Now, obviously, I know these perps know that very well. Matter of fact, today when they forced me to have this reaction to this little girl, it's like, no, but you see, when you're a kid, you did this as a kid. I was like, I was a child, and I was not reacting this way. They even falsified my memories as me as a kid. But I'm like, first of all, look at this. Is that not a child? So are you making my brain mentally handicapped? Of course, it's not true. They're not making my brain as a child. They're just trying to make me acceptive of this nasty reaction I'm having toward children. And then the way they try to think to rationalize this is like, no, we're pairing your brain to you as a kid. It's you as like you're grown. You making my brain. It's disgusting. I mean, it got so bad as when I got employed by these people. One of these childlike coworker of mine brought her niece or some daughter of somebody, some baby, who was like 2, 3 years old, during an interview, so they can force me to have this reaction. It's so disgusting. And you try to be like, now what, making your brain as a kid, you nasty low life. And my brain's like, oh, you niece, they see that's now. These people are disgusting and forcing people to have this reaction. What I did when I was a child is an act of a child. Can you imagine being a 30-some-year-old and being told, no, your brain is being now paired to what your brain would react when you were a kid at this age or that age? Which is falsified in the first place. But even that's supposed to be like a rationality that I used to be going with. Matter of fact, as I said, niece, like, oh, niece, you see, remember what you did? It's like trash. But at that age of a child that age, now these perps can delude themselves using whatever imagination they can force me to have. For me, like, oh, you see, we mapped it because remember what you did as a kid. Remember niece, stupidity. First of all, I did something to myself, and I'm not a child. And the reality of what they do is something else. Now, the reason why you have the picture of that woman over there is because this woman, as a kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, she remembers being sexually abused by her father. And you're going to hear the story, the gruesome story. And on top of that, there's another, I didn't put it here, where she says she remembers, she was raped as a teenager. And she went through horrible things. Her story is just so sad. It's sad because as a child, she basically sounded like she didn't have a childhood. And horrible things have happened to her throughout her childhood. But this is just a snippet here of her talking about the trauma of her childhood and how she's dealing with it or trying to deal with. But unfortunately for her, this woman is a target individual, meaning that life is no longer going to be life. Everything is going to be compromised. She's dealing the trauma of what happened to her as a child. And because she's a target individual, she cannot even get therapy. You're going to hear what she says. Therapy for her is no longer something that she can use because the hospitals are participant. Therapists are participant. They make life hard for her to even deal with the trauma of a childhood. But just to add to it, as an adult woman, she deals with the trauma of being a target individual. The reason why you can hear this woman say she even living in a house because she's homeless is traumatizing is because they burn her vagina. You're gonna hear that. They do things to her when they steal somewhere in somebody's home or is staying at home. They are burning her vagina. They are harming her sexually. And you hear her call herself a target individual. And she calls out this remote medical devices or technology, which is the technology they use onto us. For me, I will never let this low life participate in this program, doing these things to women, but also children. You're going to hear children being tortured. And I want you to look at the contrast. You see a kid over there. That's a child. What I did as a child over there was a child, an act of a child, impulsive acts that never happen again. What you can believe a child can do. What they do to women, what they do to children, is disgusting. The torture that they apply onto these kids is disturbing. For me, the reason why I do these things is because when we get to see each other and they come up with this false anger that they actually you pay for what you did, and I look at what they're actually involved in and the horrible and atrocities they're participating in. Some of them think, no, but did I do this? No, but you got involved in a program that does this to children, and I'm supposed to look at you in this fashion. You deserve death. As I'm saying that they destroy my organs, and I'm like, I'd rather slowly die away. Because before that happened, I made sure that these losers of human beings, these participants, involved in a program that they clearly know torture women and children. They clearly know what this is about. I didn't let them escape to enjoy what they enjoy about this in this fantasized way. Never. You enjoy this? Okay, well, you know what you're involved in. And I didn't let you escape. What you deserve for that, you'll get it. In the meantime, they try to create this theatric torture because I putting that in their faces. The anger, the rage they have is the rage that I know what they do to women and children, and I put that in their faces every day. Initially, they were trying to like, oh, you gotta pay. It's like, oh, you were doing that all along because this is what you're truly involved in. You will pay for what you're part of, for sure. You will pay for participating in a program where these atrocities things, these atrocities are being applied onto these children. In every way, reality has been countered. Today, when they force me to get these reactions, like now what we're doing, we're mapping your brain, isn't bullshit. You're just manipulating my brain. And then when they make me have this reaction to these kids, they're like, oh, you're a pedophile. I was like, oh my gosh. Now, let me just repeat this. These people interacting with us, target individual, they're just the nobodies. What I mean by the nobodies is they are just implementing. They are the implementers. They take action based on what is asked for them to do. The governmental entities running this program, we're talking about the Department of Defense. These people, these entities, these entities in the DoD, I am so thankful. I am so thankful. As I'm fading away, they're destroying my organs. As I'm saying that, I can feel myself just going weak. And I'm provoking them right now, and this is what I'd rather be doing. They work, they are employed, they are contracted, I should say. Even though perhaps subcontracted out of nth degree. The entities developing this weapon system, the entities in charge, the entities with utilizing which resources they're utilizing, the entities in control and in charge of this. We're talking about the Department of Defense. To add this extra cherry on top of everything, forget about the fact that they just torture women in this program and children for the purpose of developing this weapon system, to improve on this weapon system. This is why we're truly guinea pigs. It's the fact that the entities running this program have issue with pedophilia is magical. Because today, when they force me to have this reaction toward these kids, like, now what we're doing, we're mapping to you. You know how to see these employers of mine who are employed to participate in this, to see their faces. For me, they even utilize like mothers, and they're supposed to be like all about the welfare of children, and this on top of being involved in a program that torture children clearly in these horrible ways, to find out that they work for governmental entities with issue pedophilia. And the reason why they're able to fuse my organs and do these things to my is because these governmental entities with clear issue with pedophilia, clear issue with pedophilia, are contracting them. Oh, big time issue. And they're like, no, we're mapping your brain, you pay, with all this bullshit. Not only they torture women, not only they torture children, but guess who has the big problem? Pedophilia. The Department of Defense is ranked top tier for child porn trafficking in the United States. Using Department of Defense computers and devices, and using Department of Defense network. To know that these fuckers, this lowlife, this shit that is supposed to make you accepting of this manipulation, know that the entities empowering them to feel like gods, top tier pedophiles, is magical. On top of all of this, you're gonna hear this woman going through these horrible things and talk about the trauma of her childhood. But on top of finding out that the entities running this program are filled with pedophiles, and they're supposed to make you believe that you're the pedophile, while working for these governmental entities filled with pedophiles. By the way, torturing children in this disgusting way sexually, you're gonna hear that. It's magical, and they contract this child like retards, which makes sense. It makes sense. Who else can create this fantasy? As a child, you can create the stories in your brain and make yourself believe this better than adults. But for sure, I hear adults are there to cope with the reality of what they're part of. They get for me, for example, yesterday I was interacting with this woman. She's supposed to be this lovely mother, conscious woman. She's supposed to be that. But the anger of me putting the reality of what they do to women and children. Oh, she can't wait for me to be tortured in this theatrical way. I'm like, it's okay. As long as you get to see the reality of what you're part of, it's okay. So whatever happens to you or your children, understand that you really put yourself in this circumstance. You've accepted to partake in this thing, and there's a price to pay. Maybe it's not something that you'll see today, but you definitely deserve death for at the least At the bare minimum. It's not for me to do that. Target visual. When I say that, I'm not threatening them that I'm going to kill them. No. Oh, no, 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 no. It's for them to get that. They will get that in a way that's special. And maybe before that, they will see things that will, maybe even worse than that. And when I mean worse than that, they have things to lose. They have people to lose. They have so much. At this point, I'm by myself. It's okay. It makes me less vulnerable in a sense. I just need to deal with my pain, my sufferings, which is okay. These people have other people to worry about. They are established in life. They have way more to lose than me. But I think joy, whatever incentive, whatever they got out of this, financially or non-financially, I don't know what it is. I will not let them live their fantasy. I will not. Listen to what, first of all, this governmental entities developing this weapon system is doing, or the issue they have. These governmental entities are clearly have issue with pedophilia. Clearly. And I love the fact that every day they get to hear the reality that the entities that empowers them to be gods, which, I love when they say that to agitate me. And especially they send the children to say that, those people who are going to have a long life ahead of them where a lot of good things can happen to them. Yeah, they're the first one to come out and say these things. But it's okay. I really don't wish well onto them. I know they're going to get, it's not going to be a happy life for them. By the way, just to say that, they tell me they're going to use these kids to frame me. So the blessings are going to be very abundant on their side. And children growing up framing, saying something that was done to them, and they talk about rape, saying that they got raped when they didn't get raped, is definitely not a good start of their life. But listen to the entities and the issues.
Come under investigation for links to the proliferation of graphic material called Project Flickr. Some 5,000 individuals have been identified as having subscriptions to child porn sites, including many DoD-affiliated persons. So this ongoing national investigation has now prompted the House to introduce a bipartisan bill that would help the DoD stop the use of its network to, quote, possess, procure, or produce child pornography. Joining us today has come under investigation for links to the proliferation of graphic material called Project Flickr. Some 5,000 individuals have been identified as having subscriptions to child porn sites, including many DoD-affiliated persons. So this ongoing national investigation has now prompted the House to introduce a bipartisan bill that would help the DoD stop the use of its network to, quote, possess, procure, or produce child pornography. Joining us to discuss this, investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, the Pentagon already takes measures to limit worker access to stuff like porn by rolling out what they call the Personal Electronic Device PED policy, where workers have to drop off their phones and lockers before entering their offices. All their online searches are accessible by security if or when needed. Their Wi-Fi access is monitored in digital security suites. So how is this happening?
Well, it's happening because even though there is a certain amount of limitation on access, those who are working in the Department of Defense, clearly it appears to be thousands of individuals in the Department of Defense, are finding ways around this, specifically by using the Department of Defense IP addresses and also apparently peer-to-peer sharing within the department's network. So this study that was done on this issue, and it is pretty horrifying, Manila, to consider this. It shows that the Department of Defense ranked 19th out of almost 3,000 networks in terms of peer-to-peer sharing of child pornography. That is absolutely incredible. This bill attempts to essentially say, look, we're not doing enough to stop it from coming in, but we're also not doing enough in the Department of Defense to go after those individuals who are being recognized as the ones who are perpetrating this.
So Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is the co-author to this bill. She said this, quote, "The notion that the Department of Defense's network and Pentagon-issued computers may be used to view, create, or circulate such horrifying images is a shameful disgrace and one we must fight head-on." Now, the fact that the Pentagon workers, be they civil or military or otherwise, already submit to a gauntlet of daily scrutiny just going in and out of work, is it fair then to the tens of thousands who are completely innocent to further allow that much more government intrusion into their digital devices or the things that they're dealing with on their computers?
Well, remember that what's being talked about here is not an intrusion into someone's personal device or even their home. This is about saying Department of Defense computers are being misused to share, to spread, to access child pornography. And when you step into an office, whether
This is in 2019. Now, because I deal with V2K, I hear these perps trying to use whatever mystified voices they utilize. It's nice fate. I'm like such a child, like retard. I'm sorry for using that language, target visual, but this is the reality. That these entities are filled pedophiles. They are utilizing this pedophilia type of torture to break you down. But the worst part of it all is that they torture children. And in my brain, when they manipulate my brain, it's like, now this is a link. Remember what you did as a kid that age. It's stupid. As if I ever let them live their fantasy. No. You don't compare the brain of a child to a brain of an adult. But most disgustingly, I'm talking to people who obviously do these tactics to break you down, but they torture children. That's when you see that low, you understand there's nothing worse than that. When you understand that they torture women and children in this fashion that you're going to hear, there's nothing that's low. There's nothing they will not do. And I'm so glad because as I said, they tell me they're going to frame me using children. Let me just repeat that. The bright future of these children is just amazing. I love to say that out loud because it's the obvious. And this purpose won't even to escape that. The reality, the obvious reality is like you think a child growing up framing, saying that I got raped when I didn't get raped. A child. Some of them they say is like 14 years old saying that, or 13. Imagine what it does to a child. How do you think a child's going to grow up? Now, I don't care about that child. I'm not saying that to be like, oh no, like for the sake of your child, don't do that to your child. I don't care. I'm just saying that because it's the obviousness. And they even want to escape from this obvious reality. But it's okay. On top of that, I'm going to bring the obvious reality of what they do to women and do to children and to this woman, Megan, who when was a child, dealt with some traumatizing things and today, dealing with some more. Trying to cope with the trauma of her childhood while cope with the trauma of adulthood. The adulthood of her being zapped in the genital. Burn vagina. As they do these things to me to just rewire reality. But this is that. As her as a child, dealing with that trauma, those trauma, her as an adult, dealing with the current trauma. And with me, to do that, they are here countering everything in whatever fashion. Is for this purpose, reality is about reconstructing reality. But you cannot reconstruct reality because reality is reality. Reality is reality. You cannot create a false reality and think that reality is you're going to escape from that. No. Now, this is the reality. Look at the contrast of them tell me I'm going to pay for what I did when I was in middle school. An impulsive act of a child. That is a child. An actual child. Eighth grade, like barely even in teen. Like as a truly a child. It's funny earlier they were trying to play with me because there's something about a 19-year-old. I don't even want to go. The psychological retardation I'm forced to
to play with, to be messed with. It's just crazy. It's crazy. And the way I'm being forced to get stimulations, for me, is from the babies to the older kids. But in fact, even the young adults, right now, they're just making me think of some 19-year-old and stimulate me. I was like, shoot. But I don't care, because there's some, if there's like some models that are 19-year-old, of course I can look at them in different sexual ways. But they're just pushing me to force me to have that reaction, just to paint me in this fashion. Because the reality is this: these people recreate the reality and act like you're the threat to children. You're the threat to women. Well, the truth, they are the threat to women and children, and utilizing kids as guinea pigs and harm them sexually, physically, psychologically. And you're going to hear that woman, Catherine Nestor, talk about her and a young child. And you're going to see me, see a kid that my age, where they say, are you going to pay? Matter of fact, they were saying how what I did traumatized this girl, and this, like, no, I didn't. Because what I did, as inappropriate as it was, is something I did to myself. To make sure that these people don't go into their fantasized reality, that they don't create that bubble which they can live in, I made sure to try to contact her. Of course, she has no recollection of who I am. Nothing. But I wanted to make sure that say, hey, how's it going? Because they're saying that you're traumatized for the thing I did to myself when I was a kid. I know it's inappropriate, but I was a kid that age. Now, they're actually taking the story of this woman, Megan, who is traumatized from the whole thing that happened to her, done by her father or whoever else. And it gets to the level where she even was raped as a teenager. And today is a target vigil where her life is just being destroyed. I will never let these people live their fantasy. Never. In my brain, they're making me think, nah, but you see what happened. It's like, just keep coming up with your stories. This is a story that's clear. A woman who was traumatized because her childhood as a child was tormented, destroyed by people who are supposed to be responsible for her. What you see next to her is a kid who did an impulsive act that they try to exaggerate. An appropriate act, of course, but an impulsive act, an inappropriate act that he did to himself. What a child is capable of doing, because the brain of a child is what of a child, not developed enough to understand the boundaries, not developed enough to understand the what's right or wrong, in the sense of like, is this appropriate or not. That's capable to do an impulsive thing that was done never again. Matter of fact, they try to recreate, they will never create, they try to create a version of something else in this fashion. So talk about even when I'm younger, it's like, no, you kiss this kid on the cheek, and she's like, ew. See, Sarah, say something like that. It's the things, and matter of fact, when I said that, they stimulate me. Nastiness. It rewired my memories of my childhood that even younger. And you hear the honking, all of that just try to get you to accept this. And it was meant to counter the fact that this woman kicked her father because she knew that the father was doing something to her. That's how nasty it is. The reality is being reconstructed by Perps that torture children and women. I will never let this low life live their fantasy.
Just living life and doing things and trying to cope. Kind of went through a series of difficult things where, like, I had a counselor and, like, suddenly she wasn't my counselor anymore, and I was supposed to go make an appointment with a psychiatrist, and I had to help me deal with, like, crying and everything. I assume just, like, PTSD, just things today, stirring up feelings from times that have passed, and, like, really intense feelings. So I was hoping to get medicine to help me cope with it. But anyway, so I made, like, an appointment in, like, July, like, late June, early July. And I showed up to it was supposed to be like an online kind of thing, and it was like just a whole bunch of bullshit. And then in the end, the person didn't meet with me, and then suddenly they also didn't take my insurance. And these kind of things have happened. Like last year, I tried for like 3 months to get a mammogram. Suddenly this year, this company, I complained about this actually to a couple of people, and then suddenly this company just happened to get my number and call me, and they were like gonna schedule me an appointment, but I was supposed to get like a mammogram for somebody who's experiencing pain, which is supposed to be like bilateral, and I'm small chested, so like it doesn't make sense to do the roller machine thing. They're like, there's not much to put in here. So anyways, I didn't end up getting a mammogram because they weren't, and then suddenly, like, I had 2 or 3 physicians refer me to get mammograms in the past like year and a half. But then whenever I go to get the mammogram, suddenly it's like a walk-in facility, but then suddenly it becomes an appointment-only facility, and then it's like 6 or 8 weeks out. And then whenever I go, they don't take my insurance. So you see, this is like a repetitious pattern, and I don't know, I think it's like just something like, just like lasers basically on my body, just to try to make me look gross or something. It seems weird that would be like a weapon of war, like super strange, or things have happened. Anyway, so it's just, I was super discouraged after that happened. Like, I had been staying with someone and doing work with them, and it was like I started staying with them on a Friday, and like Monday, suddenly my counselor couldn't meet with me. Friday, the psychiatrist couldn't meet with me, and like Thursday, my phone suddenly didn't work anymore, and it was just like, I don't know, it's really weird. And the week before that, hold on, maybe it was the week before that, maybe it was even that same week, my court case got dismissed on the basis of jurisdiction. And it was like one of those things where you have like 2 weeks to respond, and if you don't respond in 2 weeks, we're gonna make this decision. Well, I told the court that anything they send to me takes 2 weeks to a month for me to receive it. So if you tell me to respond in 2 weeks, like, it's probably like a month later whenever I get that. So I'm smiling now. It's been a rough couple of weeks. And just kind of coping with some of the things that I like, high level trauma that I deal with if I'm living in a house, which of course like sleeping in the car is super scary because I'm a woman and it's super scary. But there are things that are really scary about living in a house too, and that are hard, high level, difficult to cope with. I was talking to a friend of mine this week, and she was talking about Sasha. She was talking about like feeling like no matter what decision you make, it's going to be the wrong decision. That like you have, like, almost like you're forced to make some decision, but like no matter what it is, it's not like each outcome is a negative outcome. And I was dealing with a lot of feelings like that, feelings that like things have happened to me that have caused me a lot of difficulty, and just like really intense feelings. But then if I try to get like help to cope with those feelings, like the same system that did that shit to me keeps me from getting help. And just like feeling like, you know, like I bought the lie that I live in some place where there's freedom and justice, and I thought that my experience was unique. And now I think that my experience is truth and what I believed was a lie. And that most of the people that I meet live in some variation of the same situation, or in some form or fashion, where, like, I'm told that, like, even presidents get prosecuted if they commit crimes. But the reality is, my government has protected my abusers and even caused them to abuse me. And that since I was a child, when I was a child. And just, like, feeling like those ugly, helpless feelings, like I couldn't protect myself when I was 5, and, like, feeling like a lot hasn't changed since then, like, and some things have changed, you know, some things have changed, but just, like, those feelings of helplessness, of, like, not being able to really help myself, feeling like I can't, like, someone's claiming some kind of jurisdiction over my life so that I can't, like, get housing. I've worked for humanitarian aid organizations, I know how they work, and feeling like the resources are for people but not for me. And part of that is why I stopped working for humanitarian aid organizations, because I felt like I couldn't help the me that needed help. Like, that person was just calling and getting answering machines if their calls went through at all. And that's what it feels like. It feels like, you know, on the surface there were people that were involved in the things that happened to me, but the reality of the situation is I was put into the care of the person who I later knew as my father. And in December, I remembered being sexually abused by somebody who looked a lot like him. And I don't know, I remember being in some place, some facility, that wasn't a hospital, but I've told myself my whole life it was a hospital. And I remember when I saw his face, I kicked him in the face, and I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I don't know what would make me respond that way. And the sexual abuse that I just remembered in last December, like, I wonder if, I mean, someone put me into his care. Someone told me you're going to get a mother and a father, and only he showed up to get me. And I wonder if he did that to me before then, and they just put me right back into his hands. And that's very possible. That is very possible. That's exactly what happened. And unfortunately, I don't remember the sequence of events. My memory of the sexual abuse, like, the man looked like my father, but he wasn't as tall, and that's super hard to explain. Anyways, my phone's gonna die. Deep breaths.
So, yesterday I went to the beach and, like, drank a couple of beers and just sat down there after laying in bed and sobbing for 2 hours because the private parts of my body were being burned and my breasts are moved. And just the trauma from it. Just not being able to cope with the pain and the emotional trauma that comes from someone harming me using, I guess, remote medical technology is my best guess. I went and saw a dermatologist. Hey, I just woke up after a pretty rough night. The same thing happened last night as the night before, which was whenever I was trying to go to sleep. the private parts of my body began being burned again, and it felt like someone pushing out stream. I can feel it's going to be the same again today. Already on the harming of the private parts of my body. Don't really know what to do. I tried to go to a doctor to get some kind of pain medicine, because what actually happens to me, a lot of strange things. I've been doing some research, I guess what it's called, organized stalking. I'm called a targeted individual. But the abuse last night was pretty extreme. I can feel it's going to be the same again today. Already on the harming of the private parts of my body. Don't really know what to do. I tried to go to a doctor to get some kind of pain medicine, because what actually happens to me, what is happening to me is my actual physical body is being burned. And so it causes me to go into shock, and it's excruciatingly painful. And I have my limitations on the duration and length of pain that I can handle. So it was a couple of weeks ago, I tried it. I don't know if the government has the right to watch, and the proper in a lot of capacities of the things that I've faced. So today, just feeling some pretty general fear about my own safety, because the government's burning the private parts of my body. Sometimes it feels
My name is Catherine Nestor, and I'm from Pennsylvania. This commission has spoken of a long history of abuse of the human research subject. Although no one mentioned MKUltra today, President Clinton recently apologized for this. My young child and I have been used as non-consensual test subjects. We have been subjected to COINTELPRO-like stalking, remote neural monitoring, and electromagnetic torture, resulting in psychological and physical damage. And I won't go into the details of that, because I have 4 pages written in here that is very similar to Connie's testimony. Please do not wait 70 years to investigate this. I ask Dr. Amy Gutman to begin today.
I am currently a speech-language pathologist working in private practice with young children. I had a 7-year-old client who has autism, and she was the most significantly affected of all of my clients. I eventually had to tell this client to go to another clinic, and they used her to threaten the most torture in me, as well as their most extreme forms of torture. For several months, she would cry and scream horribly during our therapy sessions, despite having a great day at school. This was highly unusual behavior for her, as she usually behaved very well during her therapy sessions. I observed her gasping for air a few times in the same way that I do when I am being more severely suffocated. The suffocation had been in a mild state for a while up until this point. Many of their torture methods are cyclical in severity. Right after I saw this child being suffocated, then I began to experience very extreme suffocation all day, every day, for about 2 months straight, and that's also when they made it worse when I eat. Then I also work with a 4-year-old little girl with Down syndrome, as well as her 5-year-old sister who also has Down syndrome. I observed both of these girls suddenly grabbing their genitals in pain and verbalizing, "ow." I observed this at least on 1 or 2 occasions for each of them during their separate sessions. During one session, I observed one of my 3-year-old clients suddenly grab his crotch and lean forward in his chair. And then he made a frightening grimace of severe
and have had a decent education. I live in El Dorado Hills, California, with my wife of 14 years, Lorna, and our 5 children. Nicole is 15, Patricia 14, Christopher 13, Dylan 9, and Avery 16 months old. Not only have I been going through this, but my entire family has suffered right by my side. We have all experienced the same type of harassment on different levels. We have all suffered the same symptoms while this harassment was going on. Some of our physical symptoms include severe tooth decay and vision loss, unexplained rashes and burns, severe headaches, mood swings, anxiety, thyroid problems, high blood pressure, heart problems, vision loss, and cancer. Two of my children were born premature, which I attribute to this. Our son Dylan, now age 9, was born very premature. He was born at 31 weeks. During her pregnancy with Dylan, we were being targeted more so than other times. At the delivery, there were weird men walking and waiting around the hospital. Right outside our delivery room window, there was a white cargo van parked with 2 suspicious men inside. They were there the entire labor, a delivery. Our son had to be transported to another hospital 45 minutes away. When arriving to the Toa hospital, those same men and van were present. Three of my children have severe rashes that have not been explained by several doctors. These rashes have been present for several years at a time. If interested, I will gladly furnish you with detailed photos of the rashes. Our infant daughter, at 3 weeks old, was diagnosed with Lerner's syndrome. This was after a severe rash appeared on her body after a few days of torture. We were told by a couple doctors to take her home and love her and spend the rest of the time we have with her. They told us she would ultimately die from this syndrome. Thank God that Lerner's syndrome was not what affected our daughter. Doctors are still dumbfounded by her rash and symptoms. Sadly, we know that her symptoms were effects from the torture this poor innocent 3-week-old baby endured.